Audio Echo Digital.
I never would have thought that me, at 19 years old, would be working as a full-time employee for the biggest news company in the world.
With over 10 years of video experience, he has met and worked with a variety of talented individuals, from actors, actresses, directors, producers, writers, content creators, musicians, and filmmakers. From his humble beginnings as a young volunteer at his local church to becoming an award-winning filmmaker, you get to hear stories of his long journey to success. Welcome to the One More Chaunce podcast, hosted by filmmaker Chauncey Jackson.
The year is 2004. Two things occurred around spring, early summer. One, I left the media department at my local church, and I graduated high school. Did I have any idea of what I wanted to do with my life? No. And I don't consider that a bad thing. Some of the students that graduated in my class in 2004, some of them went to the military, some of them went to college, some of them studied abroad, and some, like myself, just wanted to take a break. Even though I wanted to take a break from studying, from the structure of going to class, I still needed to have a job, because there's no point of taking a break from college and you're broke. Let's be real. My older sister, Delka, at the time was attending Georgia Perimeter College. It was her first year. She purchased her first car and she was driving back and forth from Decatur to Douglasville. And that's quite of a distance. So she told me, Chauncey, I think we should just leave Douglasville. And I really didn't want to, because when you're living in a city that you grew up for pretty much your whole life, you really don't want to leave, but I'm glad I did. She said that if you can find a job during the summer, I can definitely find a place for us in Decatur or somewhere around Atlanta. I was like, okay, Delka, that's fine. I was able to find a job, and believe it or not, I was a camp counselor for the summer at the same church that I left about a month prior. And to be quite honest, while being a camp counselor and working with kids from ages, I believe it was 5 to maybe 12 or 13, it really taught me a lot about patience, especially working with young kids. And honestly, it was a way for me to really think on my feet. And it goes back to the word leadership that I mentioned in episode 1 of this podcast. Because those young people, they can tell if someone is capable of leading them and guiding them. And even though it was so many years ago, I still remember some of their faces and how much of an impact and how much they looked up to me because I was just there. And honestly, you do have those days where you just want to just pull your hair out sometimes, but you just have to be really patient, calm, really alert, because you're responsible for other young people. So that was something that I really took seriously. And that was something that I never took for granted. While I was working as a camp counselor during the summer, I hung out with a few of my friends. Shout out to Taryn, Jacob, Chad, Nathan, Russell. And I also helped my mom clean houses. My mother loves cleaning. I've never met a person that loves cleaning as much as my mother does. Even now, she will clean anything. And when she was running her business at the time, she had a lot of clients. I can remember watching MTV Cribs and seeing the houses of the celebrities, entertainers, and working with my mom. I was able to see some of the biggest houses in Georgia because my mother is just that good at what she does. I can remember one of my mother's main clients that just enjoyed my mother's character, her spirit, and also her professionalism. His name was Trent, and he was a former member at our local church. So he knew my mother very well, of course, as a client, and he knew me and my sister a little bit. One day, my mother asked me to help her clean Trent's house. And I said, okay, Mom, I'll come with you and help. While my mom and I were cleaning Trent's home, Trent was actually there at the house, and he actually approached me just to see how I'm doing, what's my plan, since I graduated from high school. And he was an easy person to talk to. I told him that I'm currently working in the church just for the summer. After that, I'm going to look for another job. He said, okay, that's nice. I could never, ever forget the question that he asked me at the time. And that question was, Chauncey, would you like to work for CNN? When Trent asked me that question, I looked at him like he was crazy. I said, Trent, I don't even have any type of experience or qualifications to even work at CNN. I just graduated from high school, and I'm currently working as a camp counselor for the summer. And I can never forget his face. He looked at me like I was crazy. And he kind of brushed it off because he told me, well, Chauncey, I work there, so I can always get a resume from you and put in a good word. After he said that, I still looked at him like he was crazy. So I said to Trent that I will go and get my resume and I will send it to you later. He said, Chauncey, okay. And then after that, maybe like a day or so later, I sent the resume to Trent. After that, I didn't hear anything from him. The summer camp counselor job came to an end, and I started my job at FedEx. I worked at FedEx for about 3 to 5 months, and it was short-lived because I received a very, very important phone call. This phone call happened on a Wednesday, and it was actually on my 19th birthday. I remember this because my sister and I and my mother just came back to our apartment from Bible study. The message was actually on an answer machine. Some of you Gen Zers don't know what that is, but this message came on the answer machine, and it said, and I'm paraphrasing here, "Hey Chauncey, this is such and such from Turner Broadcasting Systems. We were able to review your resume, and we would like for you to come in for an interview." I sat back and I thought to myself, Turner Broadcasting Systems? And my mother overheard the message on the answer machine, and she said, "Oh, that's Trent." And I said, "Trent?" It's like, "Yeah, CNN." I stood there kind of stunned because thinking about even having an interview for CNN didn't even cross my mind while I was working at FedEx. So my mom said, "We're going to go down there because I want to make sure that you know where you're going to go." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." My sister, my mom, and I just took a random trip to the city that same night. When we pulled up to the front entrance of the CNN building, we parked in the parking deck and we saw the entrance to CNN where the security and front desk is located. And then we walked into the food court. And this was maybe about 10:30 at night. So the food courts are closing down. My mother, my sister, and I just looked around. And I can just tell in the moment that they were just proud of me for just even being able to get interviewed. And my mother, as the prayer warrior that she is, she lifted her hands and just prayed to God just for me to just go in there and do a good job. Like my mother was naming and claiming it for me. I appreciate her so much. These memories that I think about, man, kind of, you get sentimental because you never know how much your parents really care about you until you get older. The day for the interview came. It was mid-January. And I walked into the CNN building, went to the front desk, told them my name and why I was there. They gave me a badge, and I just sat down in the lobby and waited. A middle-aged man walked up to me and asked me if I was Chauncey Jackson. I said yes. I shook his hand, and he said that my name is Rick, and I am the interviewer for the satellite position here at CNN. I followed him to the elevator, and we got to his office. We sat down and, of course, made small talk. And he was able to look at my resume. The same resume that I sent to Trent. He was looking at it so intently. And he started nodding his head like most interviewers do. And you're sitting back somewhat nervous, but still intrigued on what they're going to say next. He put down the resume and he said, "Chauncey, we're going to hire you at CNN." And I was thinking to myself, what kind of resume did Trent send him? Because the only experience that I had was the summer job as a camp counselor and FedEx, which both of those, to me, don't show that you're qualified for working at CNN. He said to me, "Well, Chauncey, we see here that you were a volunteer at your local church, right?" And I said, "Yes, sir. I was there for 4.5 years. I was explaining to him what I did. And he said to me, "Well, that is what we look for. We look for people with volunteer experience that match what we do here at CNN. Even though it's not a 9-to-5 job, but you was able to take initiative early in your youth for opportunities like this. I sat back in the chair just really stunned because I didn't look at servanthood as something that was going to benefit me at all. I just looked at it as a way for me to just not fall asleep in church. Yeah, it taught me structure, it taught me a skill, but I didn't understand how important just being a servant to others as well as the church and to God was. I looked at servanthood as something demeaning, unimportant, unnecessary, but how wrong I really was. How ignorant I really was. But that moment with Rick during that interview taught me how it's never always about you. It's about how are you being a servant to other people? Because when you serve others with a good heart and a pure heart, you will eventually get blessed. When I left the interview with Rick, I walked into human resources, and guess who was the human resources manager? It was Trent. And he looked at me and smiled, and I think he said something like this. He said, "I told you I would help you, didn't I?" And I smiled at him and was like, "Yes, you did." And he was just so happy because he knew that I would not only just be punctual, respectful, but also being able enough to hold a conversation with Rick. After I signed my paperwork in HR, Trent said that, "Chauncey, we're going to take a tour on the newsroom floor." And I was like, "Say what? Can we do that?" He said, "Yeah, come on, let's go." We walked down the hallway. We walked into the CNN newsroom floor. And you guys, it was so big. Everything looked so big. It was so busy as well. I kind of related to, like, you know, the videos you see of the New York Stock Exchange? That's how it looked. Everybody was on their phones. Everybody was on their monitors. People were walking from department to another department. I see the makeup room. I see the anchors. And it's crazy because the cameras that I used to operate at my local church were some of the same cameras they used at CNN. While standing around and observing everything, I felt like I was a kid in a candy store. I'm like, man, I'm here at 19 years old at CNN. I wasn't able to comprehend all that at once, but I said to myself, this is a huge opportunity for me to grow within this company. I tell these stories on this podcast because I want you to know that no matter how young you are or how old you are, you can always make an impact if you're willing to serve others with a pure heart, because God will not bless you if you're not able to be a blessing to others. There's a quote that I would like to recite to end this podcast, and it's from John C. Maxwell. And it says, "The first step to leadership is servanthood."
Thank you for listening to the One More Chaunce podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts.